Great. So that was a little bit about me. I'm thinking maybe I can start to share the screen. I have prepared some slides. It's going to be hard for me to be brief because I'm really passionate about mentor programs. I think it has such a great potential for so many reasons. I think it's, academia is a very challenging environment for all kinds of reasons that I will come back to. And it's very uncertain. It's quite complex. And also as a PhD student, there are a lot of demands. So just with some of those things, I think there's a great need for mentors and mentor programs to support these students throughout their career, within or outside of academia. I'm thinking that I thought we had 30 minutes, so I have less. I will try to speak faster. No, I'm just kidding. I will try to do it as brief as I can, and then I will have to stop, I guess. But I have thought that the purpose for me is maybe to give you a feel for and a possibility to reflect a little bit about what you'd like from a mentor program, and give you some ideas of what a mentor program can aim for and consist of, and also some tips of success criteria from my 15+ years of experience of running mentor programs within academia. And also, if you have any questions, get potential questions answered. So I'm thinking what I will do is that I will talk a little bit about the why. Why should we have a mentor program? What leadership is required in academia now and in the future? I've looked at the need assessment that you had a workshop some time ago, and I looked at that and saw some of your needs, and I've extrapolated from that some potential goals that you could have for this program. It's just a suggestion. And then some maybe potential content and outlay of a program. And I will also say something about success factor and how to run a program like this. I guess the overall why we all know about. It's about creating the planet we want to live on and can live on in the future. So to reach the Sustainable Development Goals, that's the overarching kind of umbrella for everything that we do and that you do in this context. And that's extremely important in many of the contexts where I am as well. What leadership does the world and academia need today? I think that academia, and this is based on me having read a lot of literature on it, and also having discussed it throughout the years with researchers and research leaders. Academia, just like any other part of the world today, has become increasingly complex. When you are in academia, you need to be able to handle so many different stakeholders, the funding agencies, the management of the university where you are, the different, doing research for the public, meeting your own needs. What would you like your life to be? And also handling all of the different people who come to the university of today. So there's a lot of different complexities that exist at the university today, and that we need to be able to handle on an interrelational, from an interrelational point of view between us, but also inside of us. So it's no longer an environment where we can be the independent and isolated and lonely researcher who goes about doing his or her research. We are in a we world today, interrelational and interdependent world. And we also exist in a very norm critical and allocentric. So allocentric is instead of ethnocentric or egocentric. We are in a world where people are woke, where people are aware of the differences between us and the similarities, and of the complexity of meeting and collaborating together in today's world. And it's important to know about and to become self-aware around those issues, to be able to meet other people in a respectful way. And it's also extremely then important to have a strong set of personal values and ethics to navigate in this world in order to take the decisions that you need to take in order to maneuver. So this is from Umeå University in Sweden, a project there around what skills are needed in academia that I find valuable. So and something that I focus a lot about in the mentorships that I run, and that is the ability to build trust. So, and I've also actually written a book around trust. It's called Steps Towards Trust. So it's something that it's very dear to me. And I think sometimes the competitive environment of today's universities and today's world is sometimes very detrimental, and it makes it hard for us to create trust. But we all know that we need to have that in order to foster creativity and good research for the future. We need to have people in academia who can promote both themselves, but most of all the research, so that the research gets spread. And so that we can also find great collaborators, so that people hear about us and about the great things that we do. We also need self-awareness that I mentioned, and empathetic skills. In an interdependent world, we need to not only understand and promote ourselves, but also understand what makes other people tick. And to be professional in this environment, have good ethics and good values. And why should we have a mentor program at all? Well, there's a lot of research that shows that if we have a mentor program, we will have a higher work pace and a higher work satisfaction in all kinds of organizations and in academia as well. So what are the goals then for your program? And I'm a little bit uncertain about that. And I think maybe it's because you might be a little bit uncertain about that. I'm not sure, or maybe you're not. But so what I looked at your web, and this is what I found on the web on the left-hand side of the slide. And then I went through and talked to Elizabeth about the workshop output, where you talked about the needs assessment. And I have some suggestions for potential goals for this mentor programs that you maybe can use as a sounding board, not as the final kind of ideas of what goals you should have, but more like a kind of inspiration and maybe something to pick from. When I talked to Ylva and Elizabeth about a year ago, you talked about that it's important for the group to be able to reflect and learn about sustainability from a global point of view. I guess that's an overarching goal. And that is something that you can then do with a mentor coming from that perspective and who's interested in sustainability and experienced in sustainability issues as well. That is not something that I devote a lot of time on. I'm good at working with self-leadership and self-awareness, and also communication and the relational part of navigating in academia. So another goal could be to support the PhD students sustainable, so that you hold over time. Academia is an extremely stressful environment for a lot of people, at least the ones that I've met throughout my 15 years. I would say the majority say it's a very tough environment to be in. We need support, and we need good strategies in order to survive long term and be sustainable and have work-life balance, etc. Also to strengthen the PhD students' relational and communicational skills, so that they can become better at networking, at collaboration and stakeholder management. That's also something that I've found that a lot of researchers and PhD students find important in order to carry on. And to reflect and learn more about the academic culture. The academic culture, as I said before, is quite intriguing and sometimes quite complex and very much informal. And to understand that, coming from and not having had any encounters with academia before you move into it, can be quite challenging to understand and navigate in it, but also to decide whether to stay or to leave, how to adapt, where should I change, try to change the environment and how to navigate. And also, as I said, another goal could be to reflect and learn about norm critical leadership. And this is something that I also read, that you talked about women in academia, that it's hard to be a woman in academia. It's hard to be a person of color in academia. It can be all kinds of, I would say, discrimination grounds, you know, like it could be I'm of a different religion or a different sexual orientation or whatever it is. But many of the people that I meet, they feel they have an outsider perspective. They don't feel like an insider. And I think that's very important to be seen and met in that. And that's something that I'm really passionate about. I've studied gender and diversity at university in the beginning of the 90s when almost nobody did it. So it's a very long passion of mine, actually. Something that I do in almost all my programs. Then you have talked about that you would like to have a platform where you can help the PhD students to improve their career planning. And that's something that I have gray marked because it's not something that I offer in the program, but I know that you're taking in maybe someone else to do this. But for sure, you can get insights to an international career by talking to your mentor, of course. And then I know, and we talked about Ylva and Elizabeth and me, that you really like to create a strong community of learning, support, and development. And that I embrace totally. I think it's extremely important. So these could be all of the goals or some of the goals, or you could pick a few of those. I don't know. That's maybe something that you can discuss after I've left. But your goals will for sure determine the content. So the goals are extremely important, of course, for us to know what to put in the program. So now I'm moving into the what of the program. So I'm giving all kinds of mentor programs. So I talked a little bit with you, Elizabeth, on how to present this, because I could give you different pictures of different designs, but that would take too much time to talk about. So I actually give you one slide, and then you can see it as you can either add modules to it or you can take away modules from it. I'd say the most slimmed program that I give is 3 modules. The startup modules for the mentees, where they get to know about what is mentorship, you know, what should I talk to my mentor about, how does it differ from supervision, how does it differ from coaching, etc. I also always give such a module to the mentors so that they have good expectation management among them. Then I usually have a midterm seminar and then an end term seminar. And the midterm seminar is usually around trust and how have we built trust so far, to learn about trust building via the mentorship, so to say, and then preparing for the last session in the end seminar. But then I wouldn't call it a framework program. And I've understood it as you are interested in having a little bit of a larger program than only 3 modules. During 3 modules during a year, you cannot build a process. You will not be able to meet, I would say, very few of the goals that I put up in the previous slide. Then you mostly do it to support the mentoring process. So the small purple dots there are the mentor meetings. And during a year, I usually propose 8 to 10 mentor meetings of approximately 1 to 1.5 hours. And a bigger circles in light blue are learning trio work. I found that if you have a cohort of 20 participants, it could be very good to have learning trios between the modules where you get to discuss even further and deeper and with even larger trust in a smaller group, your dilemmas and potential challenges, together with some nice and caring participant colleagues of yours in the program. So this is a little bit about how I'm thinking about the program, but you could have it a longer program time-wise or a shorter program time-wise. Elizabeth said that we should aim for, or you should aim for 20 PhD students approximately. So that's where I got that figure. And since it's so spread out, all of you are so spread out, I'm thinking the seminars will be given online, and how you solve that time wise, there are different ways to solve that. So between either you give 2 sessions that are equal for 2 cohorts, so you divide the 20 students into 2 time zones, and you give the 2 same sessions all over again. So you give them twice each module. Or you try to make them meet in the middle, or with equal pain, equal gain, so that you sometimes run later in the evening for some people or very early in the morning, but not every time. And in between the sessions, the participants work with assignments and readings to further strengthen their knowledge and to prepare for the sessions. So it's to hold the process going. And the process is also held going by having mentee and mentor meetings between the modules, so that you can discuss both what you have experienced in the modules and get the mentor's input on that, but also carry out your own individual process throughout the year. And the program language is, of course, in English. Then I have a library of module themes. And so you can basically pick, and you can look at that in the slide presentation that I will send you after the presentation, but it's basically categorized into 3 sections: personal leadership and self-awareness, relational leadership and communication, and culture and norm critical leadership. So those are the 3 areas where I mainly work and can contribute in a good way. And some examples of the green area, the personal leadership and self-awareness, are, for instance, core qualities that in one module I have the participants learn more about themselves, how to build on their strengths and handle their potential pitfalls, how to have sustainable stress management strategies in order to survive in academia when you are supposed to be very independent, or learning through feedback about yourself. We often do a 360 degrees feedback between module 1 and module 2, where you get to collect feedback from people around you to learn more about yourself. The relational part could be around trust. That's usually one of the modules. Another one is around networking and how to network in a good way. A third one could be around master suppression techniques, when people are trying to hold you down in meetings, you know, the so-called non-events or microaggressions that sometimes more senior people or people within the norm use with people who are out of norm and can be threatening to them. We all know about those things. They happen in all organizations. Could also be around handling challenging and conflicts, challenging conversations or conflicts. And if we move to the red area, culture and norm critical leadership, I have seminars where we focus on cultural awareness and how to communicate across cultures. I've lived in China and the US and Sweden, and I work with diverse groups every week from around the globe. So I'm quite used to holding those kind of sessions. I'm also very interested, and I think we can contribute a lot by talking about equality, diversity, and inclusion in academia. I work a lot with bias and norms, and also discrimination, and a lot with gender and diversity. Yes, so I think we're running out of time. I wanted to say something about the success factors. These are examples of some guest resources. That's also something that I use in some of the programs. And you can have a look at this one later, where I have kind of created an example of some of the modules that I can potentially give. And this is a picture of one of the programs that are recently ended, that went throughout a year. It's called the Klimbecker program. You can also read about it in the material. The pedagogy is action, reflection, learning. So I work a lot with peer-based learning, sharing and caring, to create a kind of campfire where you can share and learn together, and kind of create a psychologically safe room where you can talk about the things that really matters. If you don't have psychological safety, not much will happen, actually. So for me, it's extremely important to hold the program together, to have a program where there are no sliding doors. And to have a program where we build on the appreciative parts, the things that work, and not to dig ourselves down into all the problems and all the negative parts of life. I want to create hope. And I want people to see that there is hope and there are ways forward. So that's some of the success factors. Apart from that, I think it's important, as I mentioned, for you to have clear goals and to have very motivated people in the room, very motivated mentors and very motivated mentees. And to do a really good matching between them so that identification can happen between the two of them. And also clearly communicate what kind of rules you have around participation. The best programs that I've ever run, and I run quite a few of them, where they are evaluated between 4.5 and 5.0 on a 5-graded scale, is where you don't allow people to come and go. Where you create a community where people want to be there, but if they have to be away, they will, for more than one session, they will not get a diploma, or they will have to do a makeup assignment. So that we get a very tight group that can learn and develop together. These are some of the things of the success factors. I have a whole slide around that, but I don't have time to go through it now. You can read more into it later. I think that was all. Thank you very much. Any questions? I guess there might be many, but.
Thank you so much, Katarina. That was amazing how much information that you squeezed in a short period of time. I have a couple questions, but I want to let our student ambassadors and others go first. So if you do have a question, I'm sorry, I'm trying to change my, there we go. If you have a question, please raise your hand and I'll give you a call. Joe, I thought I saw your hand up for a second. Please feel free to unmute and go ahead.
I was just clapping for the
oh, it was a clapping. Okay, super. Well, that's appreciated too. All right, I will kick it off then. Katarina, I was really happy to hear that the mentors would also be included in the first session, because as I listened to your skills that you would encourage through the mentoring program, I do think about mentors and how perhaps many of us haven't fully developed all those skills. And so, do you have a process or suggestions for, and maybe this falls into the tips for matching mentors and mentees, do you have some suggestions that you've developed along the way for finding good mentors that already maybe possess some of those things we're trying to develop?
Yes, thank you for asking that. I think to answer the last question first, because I actually perceived there were two questions, but maybe I'm wrong. But the last question, so around, in a way, what kind of profile should a mentor have to be a good profile? And this is something that I'm really passionate about, because when I was green in this area, when I was new, I was working with clients who sometimes took the most prominent professors and the most, high-flying individuals, but they are maybe not always the people skills people, if you see what I mean. So I think people skills is extremely important. I think also that it's extremely important, and a part of that is, of course, having really good listening skills. So not talking so much about yourself, and some mentors move into the program thinking that that's what they're going to do. They're going to, they're good mentors if they share a lot. But some mentees prefer to think by themselves and get input when it's asked for and not otherwise, if you see what I mean. So I sometimes say, maybe you move into this program thinking that you will talk 80% of the time and listen 20% to the mentee. I would switch that over and say it's the opposite, right? So what I do in the first session, and that's the second question that I heard, is that I try to prepare them for the mentor role, because it's a very special role and not all people have ever had a mentor themselves. So they have no role models. And also they don't know, what's the difference between a supervisor and a mentor, or are there any, or what are they? And then I learned something about coaching, and that we're expected to coach. I'm not a professional coach, and so I tried to set the expectations right and have the same expectations set for both the mentees and the mentors, so that we don't have mentees moving into the room thinking, I will have a professional coach. No, you will not. What is it that you will have? And I think that is something that we need to talk about if you'd like to continue with me, because I think it's important for me to talk about this in the first session as well. That was a short answer, actually. I know you thought it was a long one, but that was a short answer to this.
Thank you. Well, you were able to understand my tired questions, so thank you. Anyone else? Jetty, I think I see you, and Jürgen, I see both of you unmuted, so jump in. Yeah.
I was just sort of like thinking about boundaries. So when students go through this program, right, how do they put the boundaries with their supervisors? Because sometimes they go, there'll be tendency where students will go, oh, but when I was going through this mentorship program, blah, 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 I was told this, and why aren't you doing it to the supervisor? And that's something that we do not want to have a conflict or a rift between the student and the current supervisor. So is there a way, is there something in the program that you will actually tell the boundaries for the students?
Yes, when we start the program, I actually work with the guiding principles for the program, and we talk about, what kind of guiding principles do we need, do you need in order to, feel psychologically safe in this group, etc. So it's confidentiality. So you can share whatever you like, which is your experience, to whoever you like outside of this room, and you can share whatever I say to anyone else. I don't tell any secrets. But you definitely don't share anything that anyone else shares, because academia is a small environment, right? That's one thing. And then secondly, will the supervisors feel threatened? I think some supervisors do get threatened by, the mentor. I think I would lie if I'd say no. I think that people who, have a good self-confidence and self-awareness, they find it's an add-on, for their students. But some people do feel threatened. Oh my God, my student is going to have a mentor. Maybe he or she will be better than me, or what do they know, or will they tell my student that I don't know about? Or it can create a rift. But I think the opposite is even more true. In many mentor programs that I give, actually, I meet a lot of students who have problems with their supervisors of all sorts, and they don't have any rooms where they can discuss this. There's nowhere they can go. And in a program like this, they usually get a lot of different strategies from their colleagues in the program, but maybe also discussing it with their mentor, who is outside of this room, and where there is also confidentiality, because that's also something that I tell the mentors. You are not allowed to share anything with anyone that your mentee says to you outside of this room. And we all know that if we don't, we destroy trust, right?
Okay,
so that's an answer to your question. I don't know if it answered it, because there is a risk, of course, Jerry. Yeah. And Jürgen, you had a question as well, I think.
Yes, thank you. I would like to start to thank you for your presentation, Katarina. It was very, very interesting to listen to you.
Thank you.
If I understood you right, I think a main idea in the program is to create some kind of action, reflection, learning. And I am myself is a part of an action learning group with colleagues from other universities, which I find extremely fruitful.
Yeah.
And that is, as you mentioned, is totally based on trust.
Yeah.
You're supposed to share whatever on your mind, right?
Yes.
And what I found interesting here is that we started this group before the pandemic situation, so we could meet in person, and now we have a trustful relation also on the internet, online. But what is your experience if students in this case don't meet in real life, but just online? Is it hard to create that type of trustful relationships, or is it possible, or what is your experience?
I've actually, I was actually called into IKEA globally when they rearranged, well, they reorganized in 2014, 2015. So I was running program in how to lead and create good meetings remotely. So I was running 10 of those programs. So I actually, you know, before the pandemic, I did this with a lot of groups. And then now during the pandemic, I've had several mentor programs where they have not met each other at all. And I was just evaluating one yesterday at Lund University where they met. It's this Climb-Becko program where they met in 10 modules throughout a year. And it was evaluated 4.9 on a 5-graded scale. And I was like, I was saying, how is that possible? You know, because we have the COVID situation. It shouldn't be. I thought it would be much lower. Because people were saying all the time, it would have been much nicer if we, of course, could have met face to face. But I think it's possible. And I have different kind of tools on how and ideas on how to do that. And I've actually seen it working as well. But I also see when I work as a management consultant moving into leadership teams and work groups who work together online, I see a lot of meetings that are a total catastrophe where you don't adjust your design to the digital space, and then it's not working. So it's not like it's always working. You have to work to make it work. Huh? I mean, people develop love online, so I think for sure we can develop trust online. I'm very positive and hopeful in that area.
Students, you've been hearing from the mentors. What about you guys?
Exactly.
I just, yeah. Sorry, guys, I was just thinking about the time now, Diana. What do you think? People can actually email me questions also, because I know there are many questions now. And perhaps, Diana, is that what do you think?
Sure, that would be great. And Katarina, along with my research on how groups work online, some of the students might feel more comfortable actually emailing the questions in.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So it'll be fun, you know, to share those research results on communications and multicultural groups online.
Yeah.
That's my PhD research. Okay,
wow.
so
I'd love
yes,
to hear more.
Yeah. So students, please do email to Elizabeth your questions, and we will ask Katarina to answer you separately. But I'm sorry that we do have to close out this portion of the meeting and move on. It was truly delightful and inspiring way to get started. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed it, and I would have loved to talk even more to all of you, but you know, have a good continuation of your session, and I'm looking forward to speaking to some of you online. Take care.
Okie doke.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
So we'll see if we have Stephen and Kerstin joining now.
I see Stephen coming in.
Hopefully they are, I think they're on behind the
together
same computer, perhaps.
Maybe. Hello, are you there, Stephen?
Yes, we are hanging
on. You're both there. Good. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
What a great team. What a great team to come in together on the same screen. I love it. So hello, I'm Deanna, and thank you so much for joining our mentoring committee of GCUA today. Elizabeth, would you like to say a few words of introduction, and we'll get started since time is of the essence.
Yes. Hi, Stephen and Kerstin. You work with, you have this company called Postdoc Training, and Ylva and I actually got to heard about, I don't know, Ylva, who told you about Postdoc Training, but we have colleagues in Sweden that has been, I think, kind of recommended you. So that's, we contacted you, I think, was it last year? And just had a very brief virtual meeting, and now you're here to present a little bit on your program, which differs from the ones we just heard. So over to you.
That sounds fantastic. Well, thank you very much for inviting us to talk to you in this meeting. And is it okay if we share screen? We've just got a couple of visuals there, so
Sorry, just before you start, is it okay, because there are some people in the mentoring committee couldn't participate, so we are recording the presentations. Just, is it fine with you to record and just share with those that could not participate?
Yeah, no problem at all. So that's can definitely do that. Now let's share and hang on. Get you, hang on, I'll just get all the details out there and they. Great. Okay, sorry. Excellent. Good. So yes, so we just wanted to introduce, before we start talking about a program, just introduce ourselves. So myself, Kerstin, Fritsches, and my business partner, Stephen Evill. And yeah, we really, what we are a specialist training provider for helping early career researchers with their career development. So we mainly work with PhD candidates and postdoc up to about mid-career or early mid-career, early career researchers. And we've been working in this area for about 10 years now. And we've worked with by now about 20 institutions around Europe and Australia. And we've now trained several thousands PhD candidates as well as postdocs in sort of our different programs that we're running. And we work with all disciplines. So from physics to philosophy, we work with everyone. And really the idea for the business, I guess, was motivated by my experience as an early career researcher, very much looking for career development support. And really the idea was to create the kind of training that I wished I had when I was an early career researcher. So I've got a PhD in neuroscience, and after my PhD, I spent 12 years as a researcher in academic institutions in different, mainly in research. Also I did a little bit of teaching, but was mainly sort of in that research space. And during that time, just a little bit of background, I'm a German national, but most of the work I did was in Australia, and we've been based in Australia for a long time. And the collaborations I had was actually with Sweden as well, with the US and a number of other different countries. So during the time as a researcher, I got very interested in career development, as I said, because I had very little, so I had wonderful support for the research side of my work, but realizing that this is a complicated career, I was looking for ways of training myself. So I was helping to create training programs. And then really, so some of the training that we're running our trainees through as well, I realized what I loved about research was actually the entrepreneurial aspect of it. And that made me realize that my next step wasn't going to be staying in academia, but actually starting my own business, which I did together with Stephen in 2011. And that's where we've been working together since then. And I'll hand over to Stephen to introduce himself.
Thank you very much indeed. And just add my thanks to Kerstin for having us along today, just to talk a little bit about a couple of things that we might do together. I suppose the first thing is my background, as you can see, is somewhat different. I don't come from an academic background myself, mainly a government employee and manager over the years, have spent time in the corporate sector as well. And the thinking really was to try and, I suppose, amp up the practical side of the business by bringing a slightly different perspective and some of those sort of team management, team leadership, project management types of skills into the mix and introducing them. I have worked in academia, I should say, as well for about a year as a research assistant. So I have seen things from both sides of the fence, but a lot of my work in government in particular was to do with research related programs, funding partnerships, funding programs, building those relationships between industry and research sectors and trying to find a common language and a common approach that would deliver some results. So I'm fairly familiar with the whole process of applying for funding and dealing with that funding from both sides of the fence. So I try and bring some of that to the courses that we run. One of the things at the bottom there, it mentions mentoring and leadership. So I had quite a lot to do within government and governments both in the UK and here in Australia. On mentoring programs. And one of the things that I think you will all be finding and probably know very well is that Most mentoring programs, when they fail because there's too much of an onus put on the mentors. So your approach, your idea of training the mentees is absolutely critical here, because as you all know, if people go into a mentoring relationship expecting a sort of a fairy godmother or fairy godfather who's going to resolve all their issues, that they may well be sorely disappointed. Whereas if they can go in with a very clear sense of who they are, where they would like to go, and with a very clear set of questions that the mentor can help with, that is a whole different kettle of fish. And I think that's one of the things that we want to try and emphasize today, that with the programs that we would bring to this, that would be very much something we are trying to do. So I want to talk today, I'll start, if I may, with Career Control for Researchers, which is our online career planning program, and then hand over to Kerstin to talk a little bit about one of the workshops that we run, which is allied to that, but a slightly different approach. I should say before I start that one of the things we always try and do with our programs is to get a really good sense of an individual institution's or network's needs, because there's quite a bit of tailoring that's possible within the programs that we run. So certainly that's something to bear in mind. But so to a degree, the presentations we make today will be a bit of a blunt instrument, since we don't know too much about the individuals and the sort of the needs and situations that they find themselves in. So please forgive that part of it, but I'll try and give you as good a flavor as I can of first Career Control for Researchers. This program really came about, we wrote originally a 15-module course for postdocs called Postdoc Career Success, which goes through, I suppose, what you might call, what we have called in the past, our 3 C's. It's trying to develop clarity, so give people clarity about where they want to go and how they might get there. Give them the capabilities to do that, and over the sort of 7 months of that course, we try and give them some really useful skills in those career development areas, and then confidence, the confidence to sort of pursue those strategies that they develop during the course. And Career Control for Researchers, in a sense, is at least 2 of those C's. We don't have much time. It's an 8-week program, and it focuses very tightly on the career planning part of it, which is essentially the sort of 4 of the first 5 modules in the postdoc course. We were asked to do this because after having worked for a while with postdocs, there was quite a demand coming out of the institutions we were working with from the PhD student side, and saying, look, we're finding that a lot of our PhD students simply have had nothing whatsoever to do with career planning to date. Can you help? Could you perhaps come up with a course that gives them something along those lines? So that's where Career Control for Researchers were born. So in a sense, it focuses on the clarity part of the 3 C's, and to a slightly lesser degree, but still important, confidence, giving them a sense of what's possible, and trying to get them shipped out on that journey. We don't have, as I say, so much time to develop the capability, but that's something we will do as much of as we can in the time. Certainly the statistics we work, Elizabeth mentioned, we work with clients in Sweden, and certainly we're just finishing a project with an institution in Sweden where we did a survey of the PhD students we work with, and of the 80 or so who responded to the final survey there, 60% of them had never prepared any kind of career plan before, and a further 30-odd% had prepared a career plan, but with no support. So there is very clearly a need, and we certainly find that even into the postdoc years, we're finding people who have done no career planning whatsoever. So it is an absolutely critical part of beginning to work out and implement a really good career path for yourself. So in terms of the details of the course, well, what is it? 8 weeks, as I say, it runs 2 cycles each year at the moment, April and October, over those 8 weeks. It is tightly focused on career planning. And what we're trying to do is get people with the 4 modules spread over those 8 weeks to consider really methodically their own drivers, their strengths, their preferences. I suppose one of the things that you will all be very aware of is, people talk a lot about passion, and you will have a lot of passionate people in your network because, working in the field of sustainable global development, that will attract that sort of person. These are bright, passionate people, but you need a lot more than passion to sustain a career. And certainly finding ways of making that passion sustainable and making it practically useful for you over the long term. And aligning that with your own personal characteristics is absolutely critical. So we want to make sure that the plan that people make as a result of this course is really well informed by their own drivers, their own strengths, their own preferences, a really good self-assessment process. So the first two modules are really about that. What are your motives? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What are your preferred ways of working? Who do you prefer to work with? And so forth. So that they can start to make some really well-informed career choices. So it is getting them to ask some pretty searching questions of themselves as early as possible in their careers, whether that's going to be inside or outside academia. And also to start giving them a much better idea of their career options, because as you'll all know, one of the things about that's okay. One of the things about a PhD is that it tends, rightly or wrongly, to actually narrow the horizons, and we're trying to, I suppose, broaden those horizons out again to make sure that PhD students and postdocs know that they have a much broader palette and a much broader stage to play on if they should wish to do so. So we don't make any assumptions about their career preferences. Over the course of the program, what we want to make sure that they do is, as a result of the self-assessment process, they create a really tangible, sensible, practical career plan. So they actually leave after those 4 modules in the 8 weeks with a really good sense of what they are going to do right now. What are the actions that they're going to take that will take them along the line to their next career destination and the one after that. We do get them to do a pretty tricky exercise, career destinations, in the 3rd module, which is really about those 3, 5, and 10-year timeframes. So it is pretty demanding. And I think that's an important point that we would make if we did get involved, is that this may be a part-time course, it may be an on-demand course, but there is some real work involved. It's not a straightforward process planning your career, as you'll be aware. So it's certainly not an easy ask. We don't tell people what jobs are available, and we don't tell them how to apply for those things. But what we do, because this is about career pathways, if you like, and letting them know about options. But we do give them that platform for making some really well-informed choices about where they go and how they achieve that progress. It's a practical program, so it is not a program that leads to a certification, I should say. But certainly at the sort of PhD and postdoc level, people generally are not looking for too many more qualifications. So the practical side of things is something that we focus on. So there on the screen, you can see our 4 modules spread over the 8 weeks. We intersperse that with 3 live webinars. One of the things that we've tried to avoid with all of our programs, the online programs, is just leaving people to it. We really want to give them the chance to have some hand-holding, some mentoring during the course. And we do that in a number of ways. The webinars, 3 webinars are an example of that. We can have their questions answered. We also give them the opportunity to get in touch with us in between times at any stage by email with specific career questions, which are always happy to answer. It makes our job a lot easier if we know the sorts of issues that are vexing the participants and about which they're particularly keen to hear. We also do some peer mentoring in the form of buddy matching. So typically within an individual institution, we will match PhD students with other higher degree research students from those same institutions, so they get a chance to bounce ideas off somebody who's going through the same thing effectively at the same time. So there's a peer mentoring element to it as well, and we of course give them the opportunity to get in touch with us, as I say, anytime, to offer that sort of mentoring guidance if they are finding difficulties in going through some of the more difficult exercises. So that's essentially what it is. In terms of time commitment, typically something around 17, 18 hours in total over the 8 weeks. And that's for people who get involved in the webinars, the buddy matching, and the private LinkedIn group, which we organize, as well as the 4 modules. So it's not a massive commitment of time, but it's still substantial for somebody working full-time, which is where the online program comes in. Now, look, that's a very quick spin through career control for researchers. Kerstin wanted to talk a little bit about another option.
Oh.
Sorry,
our computer kicked us out.
One of the things we're aware of with your membership being so dispersed and so varied is that obviously time zones may well be an issue for you. So we wanted to talk about one other option, which might be a simpler way to approach something quite similar. Kerstin, do you want to talk about the take charge?
Yeah, so that was the other, because we were thinking about the challenges that you have being sort of spread around the world, and in terms of timelines, in terms of what we heard in terms of creating a cohesion and creating a group. So we have a workshop which essentially is a very similar, I mean, the core idea is the same as the Career Control for Researchers program. And this is the program, the workshop was created because there was quite a few institutions asked for workshops rather than online programs. And usually with smaller groups, we're finding the workshops tend to be very popular. And the way it can be delivered is usually, I mean, obviously since COVID, we've gone entirely virtual. So usually we do it over 2.5 days, but it can be done in 4 sessions each. The first one 2 hours, the following about 1.5 hours. And what happens during that workshop is it's a mixture of lectures, individual exercises, and breakout rooms. So anything between 2 and 4 people getting together. So that obviously provides more of that opportunity of peer mentoring, and we very strongly encourage that. We also introduce this idea of what we call mastermind groups, which are peer mentoring groups. And with every workshop, we try to give it a legacy in that we're putting mastermind groups together within that workshop and suggest to meet up, 4 weeks later to discuss, what have you got out of the workshop, and some of the action items that people identify for themselves that they're discussing it with the group, or with their individual mastermind group. So that's the other option that we can think of that could work if you are thinking about career planning and that kind of training, and giving your mentees the kind of training and ideas of what questions to ask of their mentors, and that could be the other way of delivering it. So as I said, the actual content is very similar to the online program, but this could be done in virtual workshop form as well. So that's it really from us. Yeah, leaving time for questions.
Super, thank you so much. Just trying to see if you could stop sharing screen, we can maybe get everybody. There we go. We can all be together again. So thank you so much for that presentation overview of postdoc training. Career planning is something that I think everybody could use at any stage of their lives. And I guess if your theory is if you do it earlier, you might not need to do it later. Before I ask any questions, I want to check with our students and committee members to see if they have anything that they'd like to ask you while we have some time. Any questions out there? Well, I have one silly one to get us started. I missed the second C. I have clarity and confidence, but I'm dying to remember the second C. So I have a complete picture. Capability. Thank you so much. That's great. I love that. And I always, people can remember 3 things. That's that's how I approach things. So having the 3 C's is really great. Other questions? Yeah, Ilva, please.
These shorter workshops that you presented now on the final slide, you said you've run a couple of those, but your major mode of operating is through the program. So what's the general feedback that you get on the workshops, and how do you develop those?
We've run the Take Charge workshop. We've run, I think we counted up the other day, over 60 times. So we've been running it a lot. And that the feedback, it's interesting. As I said, it works well for individual groups. So very often it's smaller research institutes that are using the workshop. We've used it for retreats. So that's why I was thinking of your group, because this is a group that will be working together for 6 months. So in that respect, the workshop would give more opportunity for people to meet each other and work with each other during that event than the online program. The online program has the advantage that we don't have any issues with time zones and things like that. So it's much more on demand, which might be the, vice versa, the other advantage in order to provide, a practical solution for providing the training that you're looking for.
Thanks.
Other questions? Oh, I see Osvaldo has his hand up. Please jump right in.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. I am interested in this platform that you are using, LinkedIn, for instance. How you connect these closed groups with the program, and if this LinkedIn is open in the future for the members of the groups.
Yeah, so we're using LinkedIn because obviously for careers, it's an important platform to be on, and a lot of our participants haven't had much to do with LinkedIn. So we've just created a private LinkedIn group. So the conversations are private among the members, and people then can use that forum to talk to you. So we tend to get more discussions or activities during our program cycle. So we've got 2 cycles a year, and I usually publish articles to sort of get conversations going. And but it's a forum that's available. So once you're a member, you stay a member in there, and we're keeping the membership to those early career researchers that have taken up the program. So that's the idea of the LinkedIn group.
And in fact, its genesis was in a sense a bit of a backdoor route to getting more PhD students to use LinkedIn effectively. And one of the things we talk about in the webinars is sort of strategies for actually implementing your career plan. So once you've got an idea, how do you find the right people to talk to and so forth? And so what we were discovering was they understood the principle, but then didn't know what step to take next because they had never used LinkedIn and other forums like that. And so it was a way of, I suppose, combining the 2 messages and getting some additional resources out there to the group.
I'm wondering, you've had this program since 2011, so you've put, many cohorts through this. I'm wondering if you, over the years, have done any kind of, obviously you have to probably update your programming, but what are some common, what are the most common struggles that you see that students that you meet through your program really struggle to deal with? What are the issues that you find are most troublesome for the participants in your program? Do you have an analysis of sorts that might shed some light on the contributions that your program makes to overcoming those challenges?
I think probably the biggest one is, the lack of strategy. That is, it's just not in their world, and there isn't a lot of conversation about strategy. And if there is any strategic conversation about next career steps, it's very short term. So we actually get them to plan up to 10 years ahead, which gets most people to panic. And the idea behind this is to think, we always use this example or this description of saying, as you're climbing the career ladder, you want to check whether your ladder leans against the right building. And that's why we get them to think quite long term in advance. And we give them a structure. We've developed a process of allowing them to come up with a sort of scaffolding idea of, what would happen if I did that and what would happen. So scenario planning, things like that. And a lot of people find that really helpful. And there's a range. There are those that are saying, look, I've had this all swirling in my head at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's just really nice to put it on paper and create that clarity. And then there are others who didn't know how to think about it and didn't want to think about it. So I guess we get that sort of full range of giving them the tools and strategy. And what we're teaching is very much classic career planning strategies and tools that we adapted to the academic environment. So we're using the language that students understand and are used to. So that's kind of, I guess, how we adapted it.
And if I could add something from if you like, an outsider's perspective, one of the things that I was most surprised by, given you know, the impression people have of PhDs, these fiercely bright people, steeped in their subjects. And one of the things I had not expected was the degree to which people did not feel they could give themselves permission to go off and do other things, think other things, pursue different pathways, be open to learning things, and most importantly, to admitting they didn't know things. And I hadn't realized to the degree to which that is, in a sense, anathema in many parts of academia, that actually not knowing things is something that people fear. And career planning and being open to new pathways is all about accepting there are things you don't know and going to people and asking them. And I suppose this is where the C for confidence comes in, that one of the things we really hope to do with this course is give people a sense that it's okay, it's perfectly fine, and give yourself permission, go out there, talk to a few people and find out what they do and how they got there. You know, if you want to get somewhere, as they say, find someone who's already been.
Perfect, thank you. I see one of our student ambassadors, Allison, has her hand up. So please, Allison, jump on in.
Sure, thank you, Deanna, and maybe I can start a video. Just to piggyback on the question that you had asked, Deanna, I was curious, you know, you've done work with a lot of PhD students in Europe and in Australia, you had mentioned, and I'm curious if there are differences that you find in, you know, mentoring style per country, and expectations. You know, are there differences in academics in those countries, I imagine, and then how do you react to that in your program?
Good question. We tend to, actually, a lot of our participants tend to be international students in the countries they're in, whether that's in Australia or in Europe as well. And so cultural differences is a big part of what we're talking about. And again, giving yourself permission to ask questions, understanding the difference between hierarchy and things like that. That's where we find that the peer exchanges are really, really helpful of those, rather than so helping, you know, combining help that, you know, we can give or their senior academics can give them, with actually asking people at your own level, how does this work? How you know, what question can how do I approach this? You know, how do you approach this? And that's, I guess, part of, yeah, that's something that we really notice, where we can help. Again, we are very tools based, where we say, you know, you have your own questions, you've got your own discipline, you've got your own specific circumstances, and we give you, you know, the tools and the confidence to go out and actually ask those questions and identify, how do I find the answers to these? So that's, I guess, how we approach those, the vast variety of differences and different questions that people have that come to us.
Awesome. Well, in the interest of time, I'm afraid I have to shut down the discussion. But I'm assuming that both Stephen and Kerstin would be welcome, you know, happy to entertain any questions that we might have as follow-up. So really appreciate the overview of your years of work on a really important issue. So Ylva, Elizabeth, is there anything else we need to do at this point?
No, I think we will, the mentoring committee and the graduate representative can just stay on for a few minutes just to summarize some thoughts. And thank you very much, Stephen and Kerstin. And if there are more questions, send them to me and I will forward them to you, Stephen and Kerstin, if that's fine with you.
Please do.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you
for joining.
Thanks.